Jaden Hartwell, a charismatic 45-year-old investment banker, and his wife Karen, a 42-year-old art gallery curator, were the epitome of success and refinement. Their sprawling 5-bedroom home, with its manicured lawns and luxury vehicles in the driveway, was the envy of their neighbors. For 15 years, the Hartwells had been pillars of their community. They hosted lavish parties, donated generously to local charities, and were active members of the country club. Their 2 children, Penelope and Atticus, excelled in their private school and extracurricular activities. To the outside world, the Hartwells appeared to be living the American dream. But beneath the veneer of perfection, a storm was brewing. In the spring of 2023, the facade began to crumble, revealing a tale of betrayal, illness, and revenge that would shock the community to its core. What followed was a series of events that would leave their friends, family, and neighbors questioning everything they thought they knew about the Hartwells. Jaden and Karen's love story began in the fall of 2003 at Northwestern University. Jaden, a senior majoring in finance, first spotted Karen at a campus art exhibition. She was a junior studying art history, her eyes sparkling with passion as she explained the nuances of a particularly striking abstract piece to a group of rapt listeners. Intrigued by her intelligence and beauty, Jaden approached her after the crowd dispersed. He introduced himself, fumbling slightly over his words. Karen was charmed by his genuine interest in her work and his quick wit. They spent hours talking that night, losing track of time as they discovered their shared love of travel, fine cuisine, and classic literature. Their courtship was a whirlwind of romantic gestures and intellectual discussions. Jaden wooed Karen with surprise picnics in the university's botanical gardens, late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about their hopes and dreams, and weekend trips to explore the vibrant art scene. After graduation, Jaden landed a coveted position at a prestigious investment firm, while Karen pursued her master's degree in art curation. Despite their busy schedules, their relationship flourished. They supported each other's ambitions, celebrating every milestone and comforting each other through setbacks. In the spring of 2008, Jaden proposed to Karen atop the Willis Tower at sunset. He had arranged for a private dinner in the sky deck, surrounded by the twinkling lights of the city they both loved. Karen, overwhelmed with emotion, said yes without hesitation. Their wedding, held the following year at the Botanic Garden, was a lavish affair that blended Jaden's taste for luxury with Karen's artistic flair. Friends and family gathered for their union, many commenting on how perfectly matched the couple seemed. The early years of their marriage were filled with joy and ambition. They worked hard, saving money and building their careers. Jaden climbed the corporate ladder with determination, while Karen made a name for herself in her competitive art world. In 2011, they welcomed their daughter Penelope, followed 2 years later by their son Atticus. Parenthood brought new challenges, but also deepened their bond. They tackled sleepless nights and diaper changes as a team, their love growing stronger with each passing day. To all who knew them, Jaden and Karen Hartwell were the perfect couple, destined for a lifetime of happiness together. As the years passed and the Hartwells' success grew, subtle changes began to appear in their relationship. The first cracks in their seemingly perfect life emerged around 2018, coinciding with a significant promotion for Jaden. His new role as vice president at his firm came with a substantial pay increase, but also demanded more of his time and attention. Karen, who had scaled back her work at the gallery to focus on raising their children, found herself increasingly alone. The intimate dinners and weekend getaways that had once been a staple of their relationship became rare occurrences. Jaden was often absent, citing late nights at the office and frequent business trips. At first, Karen tried to be understanding. She threw herself into volunteer work and focused on the children's activities, telling herself that Jaden's dedication to his career was for the benefit of their family. However, as months turned into years, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed between them. Friends began to notice the strain. At social gatherings, Jaden and Karen no longer gravitated towards each other as they once had. Their playful banter was replaced by polite, almost formal interactions. Karen's smile, once radiant in her husband's presence, now seemed forced and brittle. Karen tried to bridge the gap, planning romantic evenings and family outings, but Jaden always seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. When she expressed her concerns, he dismissed them, assuring her that everything was fine and that he was just under a lot of pressure at work. As 2022 drew to a close, Karen couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her gut any longer. Something was wrong, and it went beyond the normal stresses of a busy life. Little did she know, the true extent of the trouble in her marriage was about to reveal itself in the most devastating way possible. The seeds of destruction for the Hartwell marriage were sown on a crisp autumn evening in September 2022. Jaden was attending a charity gala at the Art Institute, an event his wife would normally have accompanied him to. However, Karen had stayed home with a sick Atticus, leaving Jaden to represent the family alone. It was there that he first laid eyes on Viviana Reyes, a 32-year-old up-and-coming financial analyst who had recently transferred to the office of a rival firm. Viviana was everything Karen was not: young, ambitious, and unencumbered by family responsibilities. Her sleek black gown and confident demeanor caught Jaden's attention immediately. They were seated at the same table for dinner, and as the evening progressed, Jaden found himself captivated by Viviana's sharp wit and intimate knowledge of the financial world. They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly from market trends to personal anecdotes. For the first time in years, Jaden felt a spark of excitement, a reminder of the passion he had once felt in his younger days. As the gala wound down, they exchanged business cards, both lingering a moment too long as their fingers brushed. Jaden told himself it was purely professional interest, but the thought of Viviana lingered in his mind long after he returned home that night. Over the next few weeks, Jaden and Viviana began to meet regularly under the guise of networking and potential collaboration between their firms. Coffee meetings turned into working lunches, which evolved into after-work drinks. Each time, Jaden found himself sharing more personal details, confiding in Viviana about his frustrations at home and the pressures of his job. Viviana, for her part, was drawn to Jaden's power and success. She saw in him a potential mentor and perhaps something more. She listened to his troubles with sympathy, offering understanding and support that Jaden felt had been missing from his life. The line between professional and personal blurred rapidly. A late-night strategy session at Viviana's apartment became the catalyst for their first kiss. Overwhelmed by desire and the thrill of the forbidden, Jaden crossed a line he had never thought himself capable of crossing. As he drove home that night, guilt warred with exhilaration in his mind. He told himself it was a one-time mistake, that he would end it immediately. But as the days passed, he found himself unable to stay away from Viviana. What had started as a chance encounter was quickly developing into a full-blown affair, one that would have catastrophic consequences for everyone involved. In January 2023, while Jaden was deepening his involvement with Viviana, Karen received news that would shake the very foundation of her world. What she had initially dismissed as fatigue and stress-related symptoms turned out to be something far more sinister. After a series of tests and a biopsy, Karen was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The day she received the diagnosis, Karen sat alone in the sterile exam room, her mind reeling as the oncologist gently explained the treatment plan. She felt numb, barely registering the doctor's words about chemotherapy, radiation, and survival rates. In that moment, all she wanted was her husband by her side. But Jaden was unreachable, his phone going straight to voicemail. When she finally broke the news to Jaden that evening, his reaction was a mixture of shock and what Karen perceived as detachment. He held her as she cried, murmuring words of comfort, but she couldn't shake the feeling that his mind was elsewhere. She attributed his distance to the stress of processing the diagnosis, never suspecting the true reason for his distraction. The following weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and decisions. Karen threw herself into researching treatment options and support groups, determined to face her battle with courage. Jaden accompanied her to doctor's visits and helped arrange for additional help with the children, but there was a palpable tension between them. Internally, Jaden was racked with guilt. The timing of Corinne's illness couldn't have been worse, coming just as his affair with Viviana was intensifying. He found himself torn between his duty to his wife and his growing feelings for his mistress. The stress of maintaining his double life while supporting Karen through her illness began to take its toll. As Karen prepared to begin her first round of chemotherapy, she reached out to Jaden for emotional support, hoping to reconnect with her husband in the face of this life-altering challenge. But the man she had once considered her rock now seemed distant and unreachable. Little did she know, the worst of his betrayal was yet to come. As winter melted into spring, Jaden Hartwell found himself living two entirely separate lives. By day, he was the supportive husband, accompanying Karen to chemotherapy sessions, managing the household and maintaining a facade of normalcy for their children. By night, he was Viviana's passionate lover, escaping into a world of excitement and freedom from the burdens of his family life. The guilt of his infidelity, compounded by Karen's illness, ate away at Jaden. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, using it as an excuse to create distance from both women. Late nights at the office became his refuge, a neutral space where he could avoid confronting the reality of his choices. Karen, weakened by her treatments and focused on her recovery, initially attributed Jaden's absences to the demands of his job and the stress of her illness. She leaned heavily on her sister Imogen and a close-knit group of friends who rallied around her during this difficult time. They provided the emotional support that seemed to be lacking from her husband, though none of them dared to voice their concerns about Jaden's behavior. Meanwhile, Viviana grew increasingly impatient with the limitations of their relationship. She pressed Jaden for more of his time and attention, hinting at a future together. Jaden, unable to fully commit but unwilling to let her go, placated her with promises of a vacation together once things settled down at home. As Karen's treatment progressed, the strain began to show on the entire family. Penelope, now 12, became withdrawn and sullen, struggling to cope with her mother's illness and her father's constant absences. 9-year-old Atticus developed anxiety, clinging to Karen and dissolving into tears at the slightest provocation. The once happy home became a place of tension and unspoken resentments. Friends and neighbors began to notice the change in the Hartwell family dynamic. Whispers circulated at school pickups and neighborhood barbecues. Some speculated about the toll of Karen's illness, while others wondered if there was trouble in the marriage. Jaden's colleague, Dominic Faust, had seen him with Viviana at a restaurant across town, but kept his suspicions to himself, unwilling to add to the family's troubles. As summer approached, Jaden found himself walking an increasingly precarious tightrope. His performances at work, at home, and with Viviana were beginning to slip. He was irritable, distracted, and prone to mood swings. Karen, despite her weakened state, sensed that something was deeply wrong but lacked the energy to confront him directly. The breaking point was approaching, and it would come in a way that none of them could have anticipated. As Jaden planned his getaway with Viviana, he had no idea that his carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down around him. As July 2023 arrived, bringing with it a heat wave that blanketed in sweltering temperatures, Jaden Hartwell made a decision that would irreversibly alter the course of his life and the lives of those around him. With Karen's chemotherapy scheduled to continue throughout the summer, Jaden announced that he needed to take a business trip to close an important deal in the Cayman Islands. Karen, pale and exhausted from her most recent round of treatment, nodded weakly at the news. She was too drained to question the timing or the necessity of the trip, simply asking him to call regularly to check on her and the children. Jaden felt a pang of guilt as he looked at his wife, but the guilt wasn't enough to deter him from his plans. In reality, there was no business deal. Jaden had arranged a week-long romantic getaway with Viviana, using his connections to book a luxurious private villa on a secluded beach. As he packed his bags, hiding gifts for Viviana among his clothes, he rationalized his actions. He told himself that he deserved this break, that the stress of the past months entitled him to some happiness. The moment Jaden and Viviana arrived at their tropical paradise, they threw caution to the wind. They spent their days lounging on the beach, sipping cocktails, and indulging in expensive meals. Their nights were filled with passion, both of them reveling in the freedom to be together openly. Jaden pushed thoughts of Karine and his children to the back of his mind, fully immersing himself in the fantasy of a life with Viviana. Back in their house, Karen's condition took a turn for the worse. The side effects of her latest treatment hit her hard, leaving her bedridden and feverish. Imogen moved in temporarily to help with the children and Karen's care, growing increasingly frustrated with her brother-in-law's absence. She tried repeatedly to reach Jaden, but his phone went unanswered. It was Penelope who unwittingly set in motion the events that would expose Jaden's betrayal. Worried about her mother and angry at her father's absence, she decided to use the emergency credit card Jaden had given her to order flowers for Karen. When the card was declined, she called the customer service number, posing as Karen to inquire about recent transactions. The customer service representative, fooled by Penelope's act, revealed a list of charges from the Cayman Islands: luxury restaurants, high-end boutiques, and a jewelry store. Penelope, confused and upset, shared this information with her Aunt Imogen. Imogen, her suspicions finally confirmed, decided it was time to take action. She hired a private investigator, who quickly uncovered the truth about Jaden's business trip and his ongoing affair with Viviana. Armed with this information and evidence, Imogen sat down with Karen to reveal the extent of her husband's betrayal. With gentle words but unflinching honesty, she shared the evidence gathered by the private investigator: photos of Jaden and Viviana together in the Cayman Islands, records of extravagant purchases, and time-stamped footage of them entering and leaving their villa. Karen listened in stunned silence, her fingers clutching the arm of her chair so tightly. As the full picture of Jaden's duplicity emerged, a myriad of emotions washed over her: shock, anger, humiliation, and finally, a steely resolve. When Imogen finished speaking, Karen remained quiet for a long moment. Then, with a voice steadier than she felt, she asked, "What do we do now?" Imogen, relieved that her sister's response wasn't one of despair, replied, "Whatever you want to do, I'm here for you, no matter what." It was at that moment, with her sister's unwavering support and the harsh truth laid bare before her, that Corinne began to formulate her plan for revenge. She would not let cancer or her husband's betrayal define her. Instead, she would take control of her narrative and secure her future on her own terms. As Karen absorbed the crushing reality of Jaden's infidelity, a transformation took place within her. The initial shock and heartbreak quickly gave way to a cold, calculated anger. Despite her weakened physical state, Karen's mind sharpened with purpose. She realized that while cancer had threatened to take her life, Jaden had chosen to destroy their marriage. In the quiet hours of the night, as her children slept and Imogen kept vigil, Karen began to formulate her plan. She would not be a victim, not of cancer and certainly not of her husband's betrayal. With a clarity she hadn't felt in months, Karen decided to take control of her future, starting with the financial security Jaden had so carelessly jeopardized. The next morning, Karen contacted Ezra Cruz, a shrewd divorce attorney known for his ruthless approach to high-profile cases. In a private consultation, Ezra laid out Karen's options, explaining that given the circumstances, she had a strong case for an advantageous settlement. However, Karen had other ideas. With Ezra's reluctant guidance and Imogen's unwavering support, Karen set her plan in motion. She began by meticulously documenting Jaden's affair and his abandonment during her illness. Next, she reached out to her old contacts in the art world, discreetly inquiring about quick private sales for several valuable pieces in their collection. The most crucial and risky part of her plan involved their joint assets. Using her power of attorney, which Jaden had granted her years ago for emergencies, Karen began the process of liquidating their accounts. She worked tirelessly, making calculated moves to convert their investments into cash without raising immediate alarms. As she worked, Karen was fueled by a mix of righteous anger and a newfound determination to secure her children's future. She set up new accounts in her name only, transferring funds with precision. The family's vacation home in Michigan was quietly put on the market, sold to a cash buyer within days. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, Karen maintained an outward appearance of a woman focused solely on her health. She continued her treatments, attended support group meetings, and even managed to keep up a normal routine for Penelope and Atticus. Only Imogen knew the full extent of Karen's actions, serving as both confidant and accomplice in her sister's bold plan. As the days passed and Jaden's return drew near, Karen felt a grim satisfaction. She had taken back control in the most profound way possible. Now, all that remained was to wait for the man who had betrayed her to come home and face the consequences of his actions. On a sunny Saturday afternoon in late July, Jaden Hartwell returned home from his Cayman Islands business trip, tanned and relaxed. As he pulled into the driveway of their Riverton mansion, he felt a twinge of guilt, knowing he'd have to slip back into the role of devoted husband and father. He had no idea that his carefully constructed double life was about to implode. Entering the unusually quiet house, Jaden called out for Karen and the children. The silence that greeted him was unnerving. He made his way to the kitchen, where he found a thick manila envelope on the counter, his name written in Karen's elegant script. With a growing sense of dread, Jaden opened the envelope. Inside, he found divorce papers, along with a letter from Karen detailing her knowledge of his affair and his absence during her cancer treatments. The final paragraph of the letter informed him that she had liquidated their joint assets, taking what she deemed her fair share after years of supporting his career and raising their family. Panic rising, Jaden rushed to his home office and attempted to log into their online banking accounts. Access denied. He called his investment manager, only to learn that most of their portfolio had been sold off over the past week. The vacation home? Sold. Their valuable art collection? Gone. As the reality of his situation sank in, Jaden sank into his leather office chair, his mind reeling. His phone buzzed with a message from Viviana, asking about their plans for the coming weekend. Jaden stared at the screen, the life he thought he wanted now seeming hollow and misguided in the face of everything he had lost. Just then he heard the front door open. Footsteps approached his office, too heavy to be Karen's. The door swung open to reveal Imogen, her face a mask of cold fury. She's here, Jaden realized, to ensure he understood the full magnitude of his mistakes and the consequences that were only beginning to unfold. Special agent of the FBI's white-collar crime division was assigned to investigate the case. Her team began the painstaking process of tracing the movement of the Hartwells' assets, looking for any signs of fraudulent activity or money laundering. What they uncovered was a complex web of transactions, all meticulously documented, and, much to their surprise, entirely legal. Karen's use of her power of attorney had been within her rights, and she had been careful to keep her actions just within the bounds of the law. However, the investigation did bring to light some questionable financial practices on Jaden's part. His expense accounts revealed a pattern of lavish spending that extended far beyond his trip with Viviana. There were irregular cash withdrawals, undeclared gifts, and suggestions of attempts to hide assets offshore. As Agent Vega dug deeper, she uncovered connections between Jaden and several companies that had recently been under scrutiny for insider trading. While not directly implicated, the evidence suggested that Jaden had been walking a fine ethical line in his professional dealings. In the spring of 2024, nearly a year after the implosion of the Hartwell family, the case finally went to trial. Jaden's lawyers attempted to paint Karen as a vindictive woman who had overreacted to a simple indiscretion, illegally seizing assets in a fit of jealous rage. They argued that her actions had not only destroyed Jaden's life, but had negatively impacted their children and potentially compromised client funds at his firm. Karen's team, led by the sharp-tongued Cruz, methodically dismantled this narrative. They presented evidence of Jaden's long-term affair, his neglect during Karen's cancer treatment, and the paper trail of his own financial misdeeds. Witnesses, including Imogen and several of Jaden's former colleagues, testified to his erratic behavior and ethical lapses in the months leading up to the discovery of his infidelity. The most damning testimony came from Viviana Reyes, who, in exchange for immunity, revealed the full extent of her relationship with Jaden, including his promises to leave Karen and his dismissive comments about his wife's illness. As the trial progressed, it became clear that the case had evolved beyond a simple divorce proceeding. The judge, forced to consider the complexities of the situation, had to weigh not only the dissolution of the marriage, but also the potential criminal aspects of Jaden's financial dealings. After weeks of dramatic testimony and skillful legal maneuvering, the court prepared to render its verdict. Jaden, found guilty of multiple financial crimes, sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security prison.